This is the second highest rated episode in all of Marvel television history, and the surprising thing is that it comes from a series no one expected much from, and that is Agatha All Along. I mean, honestly, no one asked for this series, and it's not exactly a masterpiece, but this particular episode completely changed expectations. So in this video we're going to explore why episode 7 stands out so much, transforming a secondary character into one of the most interesting witches in the series, and taking us through such an engaging story that has earned the title of one of Marvel's best episodes. I'm Pasker and welcome to another episode of Peak.
Who's been messing up everything?
Agatha is a show from Marvel Studios, and when it was announced, we all reacted like this. What? Seriously, who asked for this series? It's not like we didn't have tons of other concepts that would be much more worth exploring or sequels most Marvel fans would like to see. So an Agatha series didn't make much sense. And I wouldn't say that they made us eat our words by creating a masterpiece or a perfect series, but honestly, it's a pretty decent series. At least better than anything that Marvel has tried to pull out in recent series. Agatha has a very simple plot. In Agatha All Along, we follow Agatha's story as she tries to recover the power she lost when Wanda cast a spell on her that make her forget who she is, leaving her trapped in a kind of a mental prison. Therefore, Agatha will need to find a coven of witches to help her go through a path called the Witch's Road. Only then she will be able to regain her power. But all of this won't be so easy, as these witches are very distrustful of her, and to complete each of these challenges presented by the path, they will have to stick closely together. Therefore, Agatha's, Wanda's son, and these witches will have to make it to the end of this path, overcoming each challenge in their way. Agatha isn't a bad series, not at all, but it's also not Marvel's best. Agatha is quite entertaining. Each episode takes you through different scenarios and adventures, and it's fun because each episode feels different from the rest since each presents a completely new test. This show also works because it has very good production design. The costumes in each episode are excellent, they immerse you in this world of witches, making the series feel very fitting for Halloween season. Also, the series is fun, well, sometimes.
Who's the querent? You mean the subject? Me, I'm the querent.
Throughout the season and the episodes I've seen so far, I found it entertaining, but everything changed when I got to this episode that completely threw me off. I even said to myself, am I watching the same series? Episode 7 is so good that it destroys any other episode of this series. And not just this series, it's the second highest rated episode in Marvel history. So what is it about this episode that makes it stand out from all the others, and why is it so good?
The Queen of Cups.
Each episode focuses on a story that one of the witches has to face, and in this episode, it's Lilia's story. Lilia was an irrelevant witch in the other episodes. She had her moments, in a way, her character intrigued you with this kind of mystery whenever her reality was altered, but nothing out of the ordinary. She felt just like another character. That is, until this episode. In this episode, they deep dive into Lilia's story, giving us glimpses into her past, strengthening her character and revealing more about her personality. For example, Lilia didn't want to be part of a coven of witches because as a child she watched her entire former coven die. She also had a pretty hard childhood, experiencing time gaps, as she even says herself.
The flow of time is an illusion, Jen. Most people don't realize that.
Additionally, she is afraid to use her full power because all she sees is death and destruction. So suddenly, a character who hadn't generated much interest becomes the most fascinating one. And all this starts from the beginning of the episode. The first scene of the episode is Lilia falling, which is how it opens up, with nothing more said. It's a very effective way to get you into the confusion we're about to experience with her during this episode. Later, they give us even more pieces to this puzzle we're going to solve in this episode. We see that all this time there was an obvious message in front of us. Every time Lilia had these episodes and said things that seemed like nonsense, it turns out they were more important than we thought. So now you start to take her character more seriously. What else did we miss? What other signs did Lilia give us? And with only a few pieces, you're impatient waiting to solve this puzzle the episode throws at you. The incredible thing is that the story is told out of order, but it's a very well-structured chaos. At no point in this episode you get lost, and this is one of the reasons why this episode's storytelling is impeccable. And one of the things that makes it even better is the cinematography. In this episode there are many time jumps and transitions. The way they pull us deeper into these jumps and into Lilia's confusion is with excellent cinematography and direction. Each transition helps you follow the rhythm of the story perfectly. When the story needs to be fast, the transitions are fast. When it needs to slow down and highlight something, the transitions are slower and smoother. This was an excellent way to represent Lilia's confusion, and it helps us, the viewers, immerse ourselves more into the story. And now that we know the game, it's time to play it. All this time, Lilia had been suppressing her power, ignoring it to avoid the fear of seeing things she didn't want to experience again. But now, Lilia is forced to use it. In each episode, the witches have to face some trauma or something difficult to overcome in order to complete the challenge and move on to the next round. In this case, this was Lilia's challenge, and she had no other option but to use her power if she wanted to survive and save her coven of witches. So in this episode, we see her finally lock in. At first, she wanted to keep ignoring what was happening to her, but little by little, she realized this was a game she was being forced to play. You see, Lilia doesn't understand her power very well. She's confused. We feel this voice with her throughout the series, along with the experience of trying to piece together this puzzle that will lead us to the final story. We now know why she's dressed as a fairy, how she got to this castle. The story starts to take shape, though it remains a bit blurry. And it is not until she sees her future that she realizes what she has to do.
I will fall.
Yes, what will you do with your remaining time?
And the best part of the episode begins. She finally locks in. Now we see Lilia accepting what is going to happen. She's ready to take a look at the future, and she's determined to save her coven of witches because all along this was her adventure. She just hadn't realized it. This was her challenge. She just hadn't realized it. And the pieces finally come together when Lilia reads the tarot, which is a fundamental part of understanding Lilia's story. The tarot is the board where Lilia will place all the pieces to finally see and find her destiny. And this is what we'll do with her. Again, it's time to play this episode's game. So we find out that the first card is Lilia, the Traveler. The second is what's missing, the reason for her quest, and that's her coven of witches. The third is the path left behind, which is Ali. The fourth is the path ahead, which is Jennifer. The fifth represents the obstacles, which is Agatha, and the sixth is the unexpected change, Billy. And all of this leads to her destiny, the last card, Death, which she saw coming from the beginning of the episode, where we see her falling. And this is perfect. I mean, in this scene, all the pieces of the puzzle finally come together. Each card that seemed meaningless finally makes sense. Agatha's card represents regret and loss, which perfectly defines her character, considering what we know about her son and how he died. Billy's card represents disaster, destruction, and an unexpected change, but reversed. And when you read it in reverse, it's literally his story. Lilia's fate was death, and that was in front of us the entire episode. We just weren't ready to see it like Lilia. That's why in the end, death appears, revealing itself and at the same time surprising us, showing it had been there all along. Experiencing all this with Lilia was wonderful. Since the entire episode is from her perspective, you're truly immersed into all of this chaos and confusion she's feeling throughout this episode. And seeing how all these pieces finally fall into place, completing this puzzle, is very satisfying. At the end of the episode, Lilia falls, and the story that made no sense at the beginning finally makes sense. The circle is closed and it's ready to start again. Though this isn't just the best episode of the series, it's one of the best things Marvel has produced lately. The story is confusing but incredibly well organized and well told, making the storytelling work perfectly. While other episodes choose to reveal the backstories of other characters, this one does it differently, focusing on an incredible story about a witch who was ignoring the future and ultimately decided to embrace her destiny for the sake of others. All this was done using incredible cinematography techniques, making us feel truly inside this story. And so, this episode transformed the witch who was being used as a secondary character into one of the best stories in the series, as well as one of the best characters, and definitely the best witch. So that's why this episode is peak television.